It wasn't gin. The bottled labeled gin that former University of Cincinnati police officer Ray Tenzing took from Samuel DuBose was not gin or liquor at all. The Hamilton County, Ohio coroner confirms DuBose was telling the truth, imagine that, when he told Tenzing the bottle contained air freshener. An analysis of the bottle's contents found that it was fragrant. Authorities say testing will continue on the substance and other items for evidence as the investigation continues. Tenzing was indicted last week on murder and voluntary manslaughter charges. He's entered a plea of not guilty and is free this morning on $1 million bond. Several activists demanding justice for Sandra Bland took their argument to the doors of the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. on Monday. They're calling on Attorney General Loretta Lynch to take action, investigate Sandra Bland's death, and more importantly, to take whatever steps are necessary to protect and defend the lives of Black women.
Whether or not these are justified deaths where there is actual suicide or where the circumstances are not necessarily foul play, what we do know is that lies are being told in reporting. We've seen it from cameras, surveillance. We've also seen it in the reports, in documents that police officers, law enforcement has told blatant lies and deceived the people time and time again. And we believe that that is enough to say that there must be an investigation from an outside entity because police cannot police themselves.
Another woman dies in a jail cell after being arrested for what appears to be very minor charges. That makes 5 Black women that have died while in police custody within the last 3 to 4 weeks. Sandra Bland, arrested in Texas after a traffic violation, was one. Kendra Chapman in Alabama was arrested for stealing a cell phone. Joyce Cornell was arrested for shoplifting in South Carolina. And Ralkina Jones was arrested after a physical dispute with her husband in Cleveland Heights. But it's the case of Raynette Turner, arrested for shoplifting in Mount Vernon, New York, that's being investigated under Governor Cuomo's new executive order that assigns a special prosecutor to all cases where any unarmed civilian dies at the hands of the police. On the panel joining me, Lauren Victoria Burke, managing editor of Politic365.com, Dr. Cleo Manago, behavioral expert and CEO of the Black Men's Exchange, and Leila McDowell, Washington bureau chief for Arise TV. So here we have another case. She was in Mount Vernon at a supermarket and she was shoplifting crab legs. Okay, they take her into custody. She's not feeling so good in the cell. They take her to the doctor. They bring her back to the cell. She's dead in the cell many hours later. Nobody knows why yet. They're still investigating it, but it seems again to be one of those cases where as soon as it happens, the news brings it out. You know, oh, she had the 8 kids, you know, all of that stuff comes. She was stealing crab legs, you know. At the end of the day, she was dead in the cell in police custody. Your thoughts?
Well, first and foremost, when did, capital punishment be applied to shoplifting, which is what we're looking at.
All of these minor
5
offenses.
Cases.
All minor offenses.
Minor offenses, and of course, it's allegedly that she shoplifted the crab legs. She did not have a trial. But again, it's the issue of accountability, and hopefully, and really, there is a tribute to Black Lives Matter, which has made these demands, and that we're seeing a little bit more of some indictments and some real investigations and some independence, which is what's happening in New York with the independent investigation and prosecutors.
Right.
So that's really important, but that's the key issue, accountability. And if we look at the federal legislation, that has not been part of it. They've talked about some pilot programs for body cams. They've talked about the demilitarization of the police force. They've done some demilitarization of the police force, taking away those heavy weapons that were for Iraq and Afghanistan.
We saw that after
police
Ferguson,
forces,
right.
But what has not been put out there is a legislative initiative at the federal level for any accountability. And until you get accountability, you can work on changing hearts and minds, but some of these police officers do have ties to racist organizations. Some of the police officers are victims of maybe implicit bias around African Americans. But the reality is, until there's accountability,
well,
it's not going to change.
There are actually 2 bills. There's one bill by Hank Johnson in the House that would set up a grand jury anytime there's an officer involved killing. And then there's a bill that was just introduced last week by Tim Scott, a Republican from South Carolina, to fund $100 million in body cameras over 6 years. That's really the most serious piece of what I would call Ferguson legislation that's been offered in terms of something that could actually pass. Because he's in a Republican-controlled Congress, and his bill is likely to be attached to a larger crime bill. But obviously, you can't lead the world in the rate of incarceration and not have these stupid things where somebody gets arrested for what is really a misdemeanor. I mean, these other cases, Eric Garner and DuBose and Mike Brown, these are cases where the cop came upon the person who and was not called by anybody. So this is broken windows policing, and broken windows policing, of course, is going to come down on African Americans more than whites. As we see from the statistics, stop and frisk, thanks to Governor Patterson in New York, police were required to take notes on everybody that they stopped. And of course, what we find is 90% of the stops are black and Hispanic males. So I mean, this is what you get when everybody gets thrown into jail. You're obviously going to have a byproduct of when you have deaths in custody is going to be disproportionate with regard to African.
Cleo, if you want to, just talking about the special prosecutor being Governor Cuomo coming with this executive order to have a special prosecutor, that is the district attorney, the top prosecutor. I mean, is that still really doesn't come with any bias? Is there still a separation in that? Because they work very closely with police officers.
Well, I still resonate with the concept of accountability. That's been mentioned already. And what I've said for years now, that it needs to be risky, scary. You need to have to think twice before you kill somebody black and know, oh God, I better not do this because I could get in trouble. As opposed to, bam, while I'm typing. They're casual. Like when Walter Scott got murdered on camera, he didn't even break a sweat. He's like, bam.
And then he commenced to plant evidence.
That's why I said earlier that if you're so-called homophobic or if you're anti-Semitic, people get nervous. Well, I better not get caught being this way. I could lose my job. You kill somebody black, you can go to lunch. And so we have to, we meaning people that have a voice, legislators, policymakers, the black community needs to love itself enough to demand these things that make it scary to mess with somebody black.
That's one of the things that Baltimore, Black Lives Matter, once again with Black Lives Matter, that's one of the things I think Baltimore kind of scared everybody. Black lawmakers and white lawmakers, it doesn't matter. That to see Baltimore blow up like that, let's face it, right after that stuff started happening, there was more attention on these issues.
Absolutely, and so much more has to happen, though. Black Lives Matter has to matter to everybody.